everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Live Your Extraordinary Life podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Rios, and I am thrilled to welcome my guest, Brian Galke, who is a facial decoder expert, to the show today. Brian is going to talk to us about his background, how he got into this fascinating field, and how it can help you better engage people, both in your life and your business, and have more engaging results as a result. So, Brian, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm excellent. Thank you for having me today.
Okay, Brian, I got to start with the first question I ask all my guests, which is, what does it mean to you to live your extraordinary life?
So, extraordinary life is doing more of what you want to do instead of what you've been told to do, in my mind. So, our parents, our grandparents gave us good advice: go to school, get a degree, get a good job, and then basically retire and die. That was appropriate for their day and age because that's really all they had to do. Was you didn't have 24-hour fitness, you didn't have things going on. Like literally, you had something to do during the day, and then you had radio at night, and that was it. There were no options. And so really you had to learn a skill, you had to learn a trade, but now we have the capability to do anything in the world we want because we can learn from YouTube, we can go to seminars, we can go to all these different things. So an extraordinary life is follow your heart, do what you want to do instead of what you've been told to do. Like when I graduated, I was told, "Oh, go find a stable company to work for." There's no such thing as a stable company anymore. And I mean that across the board because now it comes down to money for the shareholders more than it does the person that works there. Once we went off of retirements and pensions to 401k, you're fending for yourself. And so there's no reason for a company to be loyal to you or you to be loyal to a company. But at the end of the day, I want to sit back and go, okay, I tried what I want instead I was told what to do my entire life and who to be.
Brian, it's so fascinating because I think back to my grandparents who were wonderful people, much more simple lifestyle than what we have today. Quite frankly, didn't have as many worries or as many concerns as we have today. Life was just simpler. And
Yes.
yet, here's the real interesting thing. Some of the folks that we read, I know you've read too, that are some of the most pioneering folks in the world of personal development and transformation are not from our era. It's like
No,
the Napoleon Hills and the Vincent Neil Peels and
Zig
all
Ziglar. Yeah.
but these are folks that were ahead of their time, I think, in lots of ways, because here we are looking at them from folks that work in the personal development transformation space and see these texts that were written in the 30s, 40s, 50s and go, wow, this stuff is so applicable. It's timeless. It's classic. How is that even possible? And how is it that we're still going back? I'm just curious from your perspective. I know you're an avid reader. So give me your thoughts on that.
I think back then people had a lot more time to focus and they didn't have that many other things to worry about. Like I said, there wasn't television at night until later in life. So people picked up books, they read, but a lot of people didn't. There's still people to this day that are no different than a long time ago. Their only source other than their job is, well, let me follow my favorite sports team or something of that nature. But we kind of go back to schools teach you to be a better employee, books and seminars teach you to be a better person. And I think you just either have that in you or you don't. When I was a corporate employee, I was 21 and a half years in corporate America. And what would I do on my vacations? I'd go to seminars and people go, was work paying for it? I'm like, no. They're like, well, then why are you going? Because I want to grow as a person. It's funny. If you want to say, I want to hire a personal trainer, I want to hire a dietitian, people are like, oh, yes, go and do it. Or if you go, hey, I'm going to go to a seminar or I'm going to talk to a therapist,
Yeah.
why? Why would you do that? We're not taught to be better people. We're just taught to be better employees. And it's crazy because life is so much more than that. I mean, we can go outside of personal development. A lot of things I used to do is when I had weekends, I would like, okay, well, let me go get my motorcycle license. Let me go get scuba diving certified. And there was a guy named Marshall Silver when I got in early into personal development. I was at a seminar and he's like, sample the buffet. Go
Mm.
and try a variety of things because chances are the things that are put in front of you for your life are what somebody else put in front of you, not things you chose. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just, are you familiar with NLP at all?
Oh, yeah.
Neurolink Okay,
So go
neurolinguistic
ahead for the
programming.
audience. Go ahead. Say it
Yes.
again. NLP.
Neurolinguistic programming is so it's a study of human achievement. And what it does is it really makes you analyze a lot of your life, and there's something called filters. And a lot of the thoughts we have and the opinions we formed early on weren't ours. They were given to us by someone else. And when you learn to really sit back and go, oh gosh, well, I love this. Do you love it? Or did somebody tell you you should love it? So I have a 7-year-old daughter. She doesn't understand hate or racism or anything like that. She's just got kids in her class and they go and they play. Things are instilled in us that we don't even know until you really step back and take a look and go, okay, why do I believe this? What do I believe? And I believe we live in a hard day and age because we don't sit down and have conversations about disagreements anymore. You're either with me or against me in a majority of the things. I miss the days where we sat down and go, look, I don't believe what you do, but explain your side. Maybe I'll come around, maybe I won't. But either way, we'll both leave the conversation more educated than when we got there. And we've moved away from that.
I miss those days. There was a
Yes.
time I live outside of Washington, DC, as you know, so I actually got
Mhm.
my career chops starting on the Hill, and I left that promptly when the world of bipartisanship was lost.
Mhm.
It was no longer fun. But okay, I want to delve in a little bit more into what you do as a facial decoder expert. First of
Right.
all, this is not something you studied as a career in
No.
school, obviously. This is sort of a next chapter career for you that you really connected with. I think there's so much power in understanding people from this facial feature perspective. But tell
Yes.
a little bit about how it all came to be and what it is exactly.
Sure. To answer the first question, it used to be part of the academic system until Henry VIII had it removed because he said, I don't like the idea that beggars and vagabonds can use this against their fellow man. Blew me away when I found this out.
Ooh.
Now, how did it come into my life? Pure circumstance. A friend came in from out of town. She was here for a trade show. I live in Dallas, Texas. And she said, hey, let's go to dinner. I'm like, cool. I show up at the restaurant. She calls, says, I'm not going to make it. I'm like, here we go. She goes, no, no, no. You need to come over to the trade show. I'm like, no, I'm where we said we were going to be. I've already ordered my glass of wine. I'm going to stay here. She's like, no, you got to come meet this guy. I'm like, why do I need to come meet this guy? She goes, 'cause he reads faces. And I go, oh, yeah, let me rush over there for that one. And she finally convinced me to go, but I went with a plan. I thought this guy screwed up my dinner plans. I'm going to prove he's a fraud. Because as you can see, I've got books on like understanding people, how to
Yeah.
never split the difference, body language books. I'm an introvert by nature. And what do introverts do is we pick up books and we take seminars because we feel like we don't understand people. So we're trying to learn about them. And so it's kind of like the opposite of narcissists because narcissists are like, well, everyone should know me. Introverts more like, well, how do I understand other people better? Because we strive, we put ourselves out there to do it. So anyway, I went to go prove this guy was a fraud. And I was waiting for like Barnum statements, which are statements that are so generic that they can apply to everyone.
Right.
And so he sat several of us down at dinner and he started just analyzing everybody's face person by person. I'm sitting there waiting. I'm like, I'm going to see if he repeats himself. I'm going to see, oh, you've had a hard time in life. Now, there is an indicator on a face. It's a little line here called a burnout line. It means you've been through some really bad stuff if you squint. So I'm sitting here waiting for him to say things that I can catch him on, and I couldn't catch him on anything. And then he got to me, and by the time he's done analyzing my face, I'm like, this dude's been digging through my trash. You know, it blew me away. But I'm a skeptic. So I'm skeptical, but I'm curious. So I ended up buying his book on the spot. I ended up buying his flashcards that helped to understand people even better. And he offered group training. So I would drive from Dallas to Fort Worth, 45 minutes each way, twice a month to learn in a group setting. But here's the thing about introverts while we're curious about people, we're shameful that we have to learn what we think is natural for everyone else. Now, are there some people born with the gift of gab? Yes. But what you'll find is it's experiences and not necessarily teachers or mentors, but it's those life situations that really help people become sociable. There's nothing wrong with being an introvert, but for some reason we have a shame around it. Now, I punish myself because I'm what I call an introverted extrovert. I love to be around people, but then I live in the prison of my own mind a lot of the time at the exact same time. But when I started learning this, what I realized is when I'm focusing on you, I'm not thinking about me. And that was the big game changer was I could go in and instead of thinking, oh, are they going to like me? What are they thinking? Am I doing okay? How's my voice sound? I was focused on the other person going, how can I build rapport with that person based on their eyebrow height, based on eyebrow shape, you name it. And because I'm focused on you, I'm giving you a time and attention, which is a rarity this day and age. So I say all the time, love this device connects us to the world, but it disconnects us from each other.
Right. Yeah. Cell phones. Brian was holding up a cell phone for those of you
Yeah.
listening and not watching on YouTube at the moment. I want to step back for a minute because you referenced this gentleman that you studied under. What's his name?
Mhm. Mac Fulfer.
Mac Fulfer.
Yes.
And his book is called
So I have, it's kind of funny you say that. I have my original one from way back in the day. You can see my lovely studious name on it there several times because I kept going back. And the original one was called Amazing Face Reading. However, he updated it a few years ago to the Power Face Reading. So this is if people want to learn it. And that's the most important part is this is a learned skill. He was actually an attorney and it's taught to attorneys for jury consulting. But what he realized is it has applications outside of law. So he ended up leaving his law practice and teaching it around the world. I was lucky enough to bump into him. And I do love Mac to the nth degree, but it's just too much information
very
at
dense,
one time.
right?
And so I'm actually working on a book myself, and we talked about this before the show, because I want to break it down into a basic, an intermediate, and an advanced. Because I had the ability to sit and study with him, is why I could learn it. But if you handed me this book, it's too overwhelming. So I automatically tell people skip the book, get the flashcards. You can get them on my website. But because it's just succinct, right? A few words instead of entire paragraphs of stuff of what it means.
And
So
for
what I've
everyone
done.
listening, we're going to include links to the flashcards and to Brian's website and IG so that you can go and look for this yourself. One question for you, Brian, though, about the study of face reading. My
Mhm.
sense is, but please verify and tell me if I'm wrong, is that this is a combination of science, neuroscience, psychology. How did Matt become a expert in facial reading? When this feels like a bit of art and science, it's probably been around for a long, long time, right? We
Yes.
reference Henry VIII. Where's the origin of that and what's it based in?
Sure. It's something known as physiognomy. And so that is the art of understanding people based upon their features. It goes books all the way back to Aristotle. So it's been around for a very, very long time. Now, of course, if you were to say, oh, well, that was so long ago, you're right. But books kept being written about it until Henry VIII threw it out. Like I mentioned, it used to be part of the academic system as well. Then during the Renaissance, it made a comeback as well. And so there's somebody named Lavater who brought it back in. But there's two caveats to it. Number one, it's not a science because in order for something to be a science, it has to pass all five metrics of the scientific method, and it can't. Because why it's not 100%, it's in the high 90s from the 14 years I've been using it. Well, actually, now I guess it's 15 years. But so body language isn't a science. Nonverbal communication is forms of microexpression, statement analysis. None of those are 100%, so none of those are a science. The reason I bring that up is if as soon as you Google physiognomy, that's going to be the first sentence is the pseudoscience. And it's true because it doesn't meet those five metrics. But I
Right.
can tell you, I've used this for 14 years around the US, around the world, and the application of it is absolutely astounding with what you can learn about other people. But like I said, it was still taught until Henry VIII had it pulled out. But authors and artists took courses in it. Why? Character development. So every single author you're familiar with used to take courses in physiognomy. There, if you Google like Dickinson or Edgar Allan Poe and physiognomy, it talks about their influences on their writing because when you were writing books, you didn't have pictures of every single character. So they had to learn how to describe the faces of the characters because back then, men wore suits, women wore dresses. It's not like now where you've got books where it's 5 pages of what are they wearing, what are they driving, what watch do they have. It was literally like he showed up with his pointy chin or his big beard or you name what it is. That's what they learned it for. And artists had to learn it. So we've been trained our entire life. Here's the crazy part. And this is my ADD squirrel. How did we learn in school? We were given books and we were given fairy tales, comics, you name it. And they told us what does a person look like and who can we trust or not. So you can turn on any Disney movie and you know who's a hero and who's a villain immediately. So it's always a plot twist. Like my daughter loves Frozen. And when the one prince guy like turns on the other sister so that he can take over the kingdom, he didn't have the features. He looked at like he was trustworthy. That's why it was a big plot twist. But like if you turn on Megamind or any of the other shows, we know who the villain is immediately.
Obviously, we're going to talk about this very specifically for improving relationships, both in your
Mhm.
personal life and in the business world, because it's going to help you better understand people. But I have to believe that this is the art behind what we see happening in FBI profiling and
Mhm.
also in what CIA analysts are looking for as well. It's got to be part of the analysis.
There's so many things that go into it. So Janine Driver, a friend of mine, body language expert, former ATF agent, she's done all kinds of courses on like how to study someone, look at statement analysis, like movement patterns, you name it. So people who come from three-letter agencies get such training. Why? To learn to build rapport with other people. As a matter of fact, I've got a book here. Let me grab another one. I just finished this one up a little while ago. So it's called The Light Switch. So if you read it, it says an ex FBI agent's guide to influencing, attracting, and winning people over. So this guy used to train FBI agents on to build rapport with people. And they talked about first, it's exposure. So they would line up if they were trying to get someone to spy against their own country and become an asset for the US. First, they would expose them to the person, but the person wouldn't see him. Then it would be frequent exposure. So you'd see him over and over again. Then it was duration. How much time do you spend with them? And then they would make contact. So there's entire studies of how to build rapport, but all those things take time. What I love about this, and the reason it was a big game changer for me, was because I can look up people on LinkedIn or social media ahead of time and figure out, I know what I want to say, but am I speaking your language or not? And so in some of my keynotes, I talk about how to tell if somebody's auditory, visual, or kinesthetic. And if so, then I need to change it. So I'm extremely visual. So I'll say things like, okay, if I'm talking to you on the phone, I'll say, all right, I'll see you later. Well, that was an auditory phone call. Or I'll say, I can't see where you're coming from.
Right.
But if I'm talking to an auditory person, I need to change that and say, I don't hear where you're coming from. Or, hey, listen to this. Does this sound like a good idea? And people go, oh, that's manipulation. I go, okay, well, let me give you a little story. When I was a kid and I used to travel to other countries, I thought they should speak English. And if they don't, well, then I'm going to speak English louder. It doesn't really work very well. Right? But if you learn basic phrases everywhere you go in the world, what happens is when you try to speak their language, they try to speak yours back and it's reciprocal. And that's what this is. It's not about manipulating people, it's learning to understand other people and figure out how do I change what I want from a me to a we?
Mm.
And we were all raised with the golden rule, which is treat other people the way you want to be treated. But there's a fallacy to that. You don't want to be treated like I want to be treated. So it's more about trying to understand you. How do you take in information? How do you process information? How can I make sure that the communication that we're trying to create is best understood by you? That's where it was a
The
game
better
changer for me.
connection so that there's a
Yes,
better connection and therefore that rapport is stronger and the likelihood of being understood or understanding is going to go up significantly.
100%.
All right, Brian. Well, let's dive right into this. I'm a little nervous because we're going to talk about me in a little bit. But first, before we do that, let's go over some of the basics. What is it
Sure.
we're looking at? I know there's a lot of different things, but
Correct.
what are the most important? Where do you start when you look at facial feature decoding? Where's the beginning of this, if you will?
So if I only have 30 minutes with a room full of people, I start with eyebrows. And the reason why is you can see them from across the room. You can see them as people are walking towards you, or you can look them up very easily on the internet. But the other reason I really teach it is because eyebrows lead to eye contact. So one of the things that happened to us over the past few years is we've lost the ability to pay attention in a room. We have smartwatches, smartphones, you name it. Half the time on a Zoom call, we're down looking at the people down here instead of looking where the camera is.
Right.
And so we've lost the ability to have eye contact. As a matter of fact, have you heard about the intelligent.com study that they did of 800 employers in 2023?
No, tell me
Oh,
more.
okay. So 800 employers were interviewed about hiring kids right out of college and new hires. And there were several things that were wrong. I'll actually text you this picture when we're done. But it was 19% of them bring their parents to the interview. 21% don't turn on the camera when it's a virtual interview. Inappropriate salary expectations, inappropriate attire, and lack of eye contact were the major ones that were there. And it's because a lot of these kids, think about it, for 2 years of their years that they were supposed to be in college learning to interact, they went to virtual training. Well, in virtual training, we don't even know who's wearing pants, let alone paying attention. We've stopped learning to read body language. Like right now, you and I are on a virtual call. Body language does not help me other than looking at, are you nodding yes or are you shaking your head no? But otherwise, body language is out. I can't see your arms crossed, your legs crossed. Are you nervous, fidgeting with your hands? Can't tell. but I can see your face the entire time. And its resting facial features is what I teach. However, if you want to double up on it, if you've ever seen the TV show Lie to Me with Paul Ekman, it's based on him. I have several of his books. That is like body language for the face. So it's within milliseconds, we make facial movements that tell you what's going on in somebody's head. Now, I don't study that, and here's the reason why. Once I'm learning to speak your language, I want to go into active listening. And I'm afraid if I'm waiting the whole time to see how your face moves, that I'm not going to be paying attention to the conversation. And because I'm visual, I have to focus twice as hard to listen and not get distracted by something else that is going on in the room. So I do recommend his training. I just personally haven't done it because I'm afraid of distracting me from the conversation and being present with the person.
I know a little bit about Brian, and he excelled in sales. He ended up
Mhm,
having this very illustrious corporate career that started off at the help desk, and then he actually went on and did really well in sales. And we have that in common.
mhm.
It's not something that I would have ever thought I did well in, but when you
Yes.
think about and in fact, I'm working on a course I never thought I'd be working on, talking about sales, because
Mhm.
when we talk about it from a place of understanding, active
Yes.
listening, rapport, understanding people's pain points, how you
Yes.
can be a solution or problem solver. We're not thinking at it about it from a place of funnels and gen lead. And it's just a very different language that I think
Mhm.
we've used and have excelled at in the traditional corporate arena that I think actually is somewhat of a lost art in the world of entrepreneurs, and particularly people who haven't had that corporate background, that
Mhm.
have that serial entrepreneurs that are so familiar with all of the jargon of the online business world. And we hear again funnels and systems and all
Right.
that great. But if you don't have the fundamentals and what you said, active listening, I was like, bam, he's speaking my language. You've lost it already. It making the world so much more complicated and harder than it needs to be. I'm so grateful. And I know what you're going to teach us here is going to help people simply. Like, I want everyone to listen carefully. Obviously, if you can, when this is up on YouTube, I hope that you will go check that out. And we are going to share some actual video clips of this conversation that
Mhm.
Brian walks us through on social media. So you can check that out as well. But I hope that you listen carefully to what Brian is talking about, because this could help be a game changer and how you interact with others in a way that generates greater understanding, better rapport, and as a result, better engagement. So, Brian, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. I want to double down one thing that what you just talked about. Look, if you don't learn soft skills, you're going to be replaced by AI or automation because there are actually chatbots now doing sales. So inside sales reps are getting laid off because AI can answer the basic questions. If you don't learn how to stand out, you're going to be left behind. And that's in almost every career, AI or automation has to be there. So I have two sisters who are graphic artists. Luckily, they're embedded in their careers and they understand things right now that what is the corporate dream? What is it that they need? But pretty soon, you're going to be able to type a sentence into AI and get those graphics and everything else done. So, take, for example, video editors. 2 years ago, they made big bucks because cutting up a video was very difficult. I ended up now, the software I use, I do it all myself because I can be done with it in 20 minutes,
Yep.
versus it used to take hours. And so I think what everybody listening really needs to focus on soft skills. I don't care if you take statement analysis to learn to understand people by their words, read body language books, please take this one because this is what keeps you engaged with the person. And body language is great. Again, I recommend books. You Say More Than You Think by Janine Driver, What Everybody's Saying by Joe Navarro, I think are two of the top books on body language. But you have to learn how to understand people and how to have conversations and be present in those conversations if you want to retain employment in the future.
Yeah.
So,
At the end of the day, it's based on trust, and people
yes.
are going to trust people who
Mhm.
understand them, that help them feel heard and understood and seen.
Yes. And people ask, well, how do I apply this in my world? Okay. So it doesn't matter what it is. Do people walk into your store? Are you reaching out to people? If people are walking in your store, then it's a reaction skill, kind of like body language. But as soon as they're walking towards you, you can start thinking, okay, do they have high eyebrows, low eyebrows? What shape are their eyebrows? If you know who you're going to meet with, then you can look them up on LinkedIn, social media ahead of time. So I used to go do presentations Any customer over $1 million, I was flown all around the US along with two other people to do presentations. Now, I mentioned before, I felt shame that I had to learn these skills because I thought everyone else it just came naturally. But the reason the company's named Subtle Skills is because I was learning all these things, but I was never telling anybody why I was successful. And I would go into a room, and we a lot of times had blind evaluation committees. And so we didn't know who we were going to meet with until we walked in the room. But as soon as they walked in, I started figuring out, okay, how do I speak to that person? How do I speak to that person? How do I speak to that person? And when you're talking to them, you make eye contact with them. And that's what lets people know, hey, I'm paying attention and this part is for you. And so that's where it makes a difference to it is learning to understand other people and pay attention to them is what helps them quite a bit. So let's get into teaching people some basics. I mentioned earlier, I love eyebrows because you can see them from across the room unless they have something called chameleon eyebrows. And we'll talk about that in a second. So we talk about faces in our everyday language. We say things like, they've got an eye for this, they've got an ear for this. Keep a stiff upper lip if we want someone to stay stoic. Take one on the chin is more than a boxing term. It talks about how people handle criticism and adversity. So I like comedies, and comedies, there's two types. There's highbrow humor and lowbrow humor. So highbrow humor is where someone tells a joke and you have to kind of think about it and then you laugh. Lowbrow humor is Jackass and Three Stooges, where it's physical comedy, you laugh immediately. So if you see someone who has high eyebrows, and what's high is more than a finger above the eye, is their eyebrow, those are people who need more time to make a decision. So I teach this in door to door sales. They have 7 seconds to talk to someone before the door gets slammed in their face, they get a gun pulled on them, or somebody calls the cops. And so, if somebody has a higher eyebrow, they're going to need more time to make a decision. It has nothing to do with intelligence. It's how people like to vet information. So some people are ready, aim, fire. Some people are ready, fire, aim. And so high eyebrow people just need more time to make a decision. So if you force someone with a higher eyebrow to make a fast decision, I don't care if it's going to dinner or it's selling them a home, and you force them, they're going to have buyer's remorse because you didn't give them the time that they want to make a decision.
My husband's not here, but I'm sure he's laughing because I'm looking now going, I think I'm in the eyebrow.
Oh yeah, you have the high eyebrow. And we'll talk about two things on your face that stand out to me. Just immediate, well, actually three that we'll talk about here in a second. But then if they have low eyebrows, then it's get there as soon as possible. So imagine eyebrows are like speed bumps on your forehead. Data tries to race down your forehead to get to your eye. Well, the higher the eyebrow can only go so fast, go over the speed bump and try and speed back up. So it's like a speed bump in the middle of the road. It's designed to slow you down. However, a low eyebrow is like a speed bump right next to the stop sign. So I can just race down that street and I only have to stop at the very end and go slow. So if I have 30 minutes on somebody's calendar, I will look and go, okay, high eyebrows, we're probably going to talk for 25 minutes. If they have low eyebrows, I better get to the point in 5 minutes or else I'm going to start losing them. So we would have to answer these huge RFPs, which is a request for proposal. Sometimes it'd be hundreds of pages and we'd have like 280 slides. If I went into the room and saw that it was all low eyebrow people, I thought, oh crap, we're going to have to speed through this.
The executive summary of 7 slides will be now used.
Exactly. But again, I couldn't tell the rest of the team what I was doing because I was like, well, I can't 100% prove it, but I know that this works. And so I would just do these changes on the fly. And that's kind of what helped me. So, like you, I got pushed into sales. I started on the help desk. Why? Introvert's dream. Everybody has to come to you. Just like when I was younger, I was a bouncer, bartender, server. I did retail, but ladies' shoes, not a fun job. But people had to come to me. And then
Right.
after the help desk, I mentioned earlier, I still like to be around people. So it drove me nuts not to be around people. So I learned how to install stuff. I used to sell technology to jails and prisons. So I would walk past inmates with tools, trying not to get stabbed with my own stuff. But then when I was there, we worked for a small company in the beginning. We didn't have a corporate trainer. So I became the installer, then the trainer. And I loved the training part. And that's where I got to use all my skills to learn people, right? Because now I'm in a room and I'm teaching them things. And this was brand new technology to people that aren't really technology driven. They're very good at helping, assisting, taking care of inmates and people that are in prison. But technology was new. So I had to learn how to train different people and look in the audience and break them down. Then I started doing presentations and I was good at it. And so we started winning more and more business. And that's how I ended up on that team. It was called the Pro Demo team. Any customer over $1 million, I was flown all over the US and it'd be last minute and we wouldn't know the people. I didn't get to build a relationship with them ahead of time. But if I knew who might be in the room, I would go and look them up on LinkedIn. Then when I was in the rooms, we just kept winning more and more business. So I got moved to 9 different promotions in the company and all the way up to regional vice president of sales. So even internal politics, coworkers, customers, you name it, I wasn't telling people what I was doing, but this was making me more and more successful. And after 21 and a half years, I got fired. I was written up for repetitive poor performance, but I never had a PIP or performance improvement plan for people who aren't in corporate America. But a TikTok video went viral with 3 million views, and suddenly the next week I was fired. And
Ah,
yes, it was the best thing that happened to me, though. I was really miserable at a job that I made a lot of money, and I hated every day of it. But luckily in 2021, I started speaking because I originally wanted to speak before the pandemic, but when we all went into lockdown, speaking gigs went out the window. But I would speak for free, so there was never conflict with my job. So I would take vacation days, go and speak for free, and I loved it. And the day I got fired, I gave myself a day to be mad, but then all the excuses I had to not be a speaker were gone. Because I say, well, I got this corporate job, and well, I make really good money. To well, now I don't have those excuses anymore. Now, had I been fired after 21 and a half years without a backup plan, I would have been devastated. Instead, I was excited. Now, pissed off for the first day because of the way it happened, but then I got to do what I love doing now. And so now I get to go on stages, but even when I'm talking to people I don't know, I'll bring people up on stage at the end of a talk and I go, and do they have high eyebrows, low eyebrows? So I just realized I went off on a rant. So let's go back to teaching your audience. So high eyebrows, they need time to make a decision. Low eyebrows, get to the point as soon as possible. Now, next is there's 3 basic shapes. And when I say this, go look at Legos. Legos on the characters does 3 basic shapes: straight, angled, and rounded. So you and I have 2 different ones. So
yeah.
I have angled eyebrows. So angled eyebrows are, what's my angle? Help me understand it so then I can help other people. You, on the other hand, have a rounded eyebrow. Rounded eyebrow people think about the people around them first and themselves second. So someone trying to sell you and I would have to sell differently. To you, it's about make it everyone else's win, everyone that's around you first, then talk about how you benefit. For me, I have to learn it. What's my angle? So then I can help people. So we're still trying to help people, but we're going to have to, we look at it differently. Now, what's crazy is I show in my keynotes all the time. I used to have straight eyebrows when I was a kid, but as I learned to become a corporate trainer, I had to learn the material to then teach it to others. So I show a picture of me at 18 versus 38 and how much my face has changed over time. And then the final eyebrow that's in the basics is a straight eyebrow. So straight eyebrows get straight to the point, facts, figures, data. So you walk up, you start looking at someone, you go high or low, how much time do they need to make a decision? Straight, get straight to the point. Angled, what's their angled? Rounded, think about the people around them. That is my basic of what I teach everyone because, again, you get credit for eye contact when you're looking at eyebrows. So a lot of people are introverts by nature, or they're nervous going into a sales situation.
Yes.
Instead of going, you're focused on the person, go high or low, straight, rounded, angled, and you're getting credit for eye contact the entire time. And that's what builds rapport because we are so attention starved
Right.
this day and age. And if anybody knows anything about human psychology, we're familiar with Maslow's needs, this little pyramid, physical safety, you name it. But there's 4 basic things that we all want: physical safety, emotional safety. We want to feel seen and heard, and we want to feel connected with others. Well, this one's helping with 3 and 4. Because if I'm focused on you and I'm making it about us and the presentation instead of my product and me, that's feeling seen and heard. And then once we're having those conversations, that's what creates connection with people at the exact same time. And that's where things really change.
Here, let me ask you this because this is now actually making me think about my default language, even
Mhm.
highbrow, rounded eyebrows.
Yes.
I use the word we almost always. I rarely say I. I occasionally do when and it's something from an authority standpoint and I have to express that. But I typically, even if I'm not part of the company, which I typically when I'm going in to speak to a company, I'm
Mhm.
not consultant, but I talk about us and
Yes.
we need to think
Yeah.
about this. Is this all connected? Like
Yes.
that's my default language?
So there's 43 muscles in the face. The mind creates movement, movement creates muscle. And what happens is our thoughts, when our parents said, don't make that face or you'll get stuck that way, there's some truth to it. And so, yes, if you go and look at people over time, if you've ever seen someone who left a career they hated or a bad relationship, what do we say to them like a few months later? Wow, you just look like a different person. And
Yeah.
they do, because instead of frowning all the time, they're smiling. And so little things like I have a downturned mouth because I spent the last few years before I left or got fired miserable on a daily basis. And things were going wrong. Products were breaking all the time. I was having to just cover just ridiculous stuff. And so I got a downturned mouth. And so I have to think, smile more because I have a downturned mouth. And so it's these little effects that we have on our face. And it's also the reason, kind of on a morbid side, if you've ever been to an open casket funeral and you go and look at the person, you're like, I don't recognize who that person is. It's because the muscle tension is gone in their face.
Right.
And if you want to take a living example, look at someone who's had a stroke. So, stroke is either on one side of the brain or the other, and then it affects the opposite side of the face. Well, that's why we have two sides of our face. There's a personal side and there's a professional side. So, for those listening, the personal side is their left side. So, you can think, if I'm talking to them, if I were to ask them, hey, are you married? That's a personal question. A wedding ring in the US goes on the left hand. So, that is their personal side.
Okay.
If not, then it's the right-hand side, which is the professional side. So depending on what you're talking to the person about, now you have a fairly symmetrical face, but I'm even going to point at this out on yours. So you have higher rounded on your professional side. Sorry, I should point the same way that I'm looking at you than you do in your personal side. Your eyebrows a little bit lower on your personal side. And if you look, it's a little more straight.
So my right side, everybody, which is your
Yes,
professional side, is a little
correct.
higher. I've
Yes.
noted that I probably need to get this lifted.
No, it just tells people you make decisions faster at home than you do at work,
So
right?
true.
Because you start thinking about everything else. Now, what's also interesting is you have a fuller upper eyelid on your right hand side or your business side than you do on your personal side. So, the more lid you see, the more they think in terms of we. I like things that rhyme. I was raised with Dr. Seuss. So, when I see fuller upper eyelids, have you read the five love languages?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Time and attention is
Gary Chapman. Wait.
Gary Chapman. That's correct.
Okay.
So fuller upper eyelids are time and attention people. They're very much a we people, love to do things with other people versus people who don't have a lot of upper eyelid are I people. So the more I you can see, the more they think in terms of I. So if I see someone, I don't have a lot of upper eyelid. And if I see someone with a full upper eyelid, I'm like, okay, I need to invite them to go with me because my default is I'm going to go do this. If you want to come, cool, but I don't need you to go. So, for example, I just went to Italy with, believe it or not, my ex-wife and my daughter. We make awesome co-parents. We go on trips once a year because I grew up child of divorce where I had memories with either my mom or my dad. We don't want that for her.
Oh,
So we do,
thanks for making that very intentional decision to raise.
yes. And you know what? We get along better as co-parents than we did married. So it works out. There were some mornings that they wanted to sleep in, and I'm not going to sit and watch someone sleep. So I'm like, hey, I'm just going to go into the city, and I would walk around Italy by myself. And she has fuller lids. So I know when she wants to do stuff, then I go and do stuff with her. So it's learning to adapt to people all the time. So I just bring that up because you have fuller upper eyelids. So you love doing things with other people. You're more of a we person than a me person. Your face screams people person. And you asked this earlier, and I'm going to now fill you in on what it was. So you have the rounded eyebrows, which are, I think about the people around me first and myself second. You have the fuller eyelid. Hey, where are we going to do? Very inclusive person by nature. Where are we going? What are we going to do? So that's not my default. But if I was talking to you, I would use more inclusive language because I know it's what makes you happy. Then you have what's known as healer cheeks. So if you look at even the way light's reflecting off your cheeks right here, the roundest part is here. And so those are called healer cheeks. If you open up any fairy tale, storytelling book, and it's the person taking care of others, Santa Claus, Mother Goose, you name it, they have those big rounded cheeks out here that says, I will help take care of you. So people will come and talk to you and tell you stories all the time. Here's another one. So if you notice my nose, you can't see my nostrils. Okay. But yours, your nose angles up slightly. So that tells people I'm up for listening to anything. So that's why people are naturally drawn to you and go, well, let me just tell you everything about me. And you're like, why is everyone confiding? It's because your face invites them in.
Well, Brian just explained to you why I got the title of CEO Whisperer all those years ago, because I would be able to sit down at the table and people who typically wouldn't actually engage in conversation would
Mhm.
take me aside and say, "You know what I'm talking about, Michelle, right?" And so I would become the sounding board for CEOs pretty, I wouldn't say early in my career, kind of midway through my career. And it became the signature. I didn't
Yeah.
actually have to know too much about, I'd been in the business for a long time, but I'd have a very talented team to go in and do all the technical side of whatever we were
Mhm.
doing. My job was to be there, be myself, and focus on rapport building so that that person would open up and trust us more. And
Right.
I want to say a little bit of like a secret weapon in a ways because it was very disarming, I think, for people. I'd be like,
Mhm.
Michelle, I just told you my whole life story. And I was like, thank you very much. It's very helpful for what we need
Yes.
next. I now know what keeps you up late at night and how we can, but it works great in the coaching arena. I don't
Absolutely.
think I could be as effective as I would like to be if people didn't open up and tell me, because I get a lot of corporate people who have historically been very guarded telling me things that go back to, I now know what the protective belief that they've been carrying around for so long is
Mhm.
that we need to figure out and replace. So this is really fascinating, Brian. Thank you so much.
Oh,
I
yeah.
kind of knew these things instinctively about myself, but I did not know the connection with the
Right.
physical features.
Well, and again, we've read books our entire life that taught us who people are based on their faces because the authors told us there's this person in this book and this is what they look like. Or cartoons, comic books, you name it. We've kind of been introduced to it its entire time. So I'm cheating. I'm doing something real fast.
A lot of people who know while Brian's working on this, know I smile a lot. It was because when I didn't smile when I was younger, I used to get scolded for it. Like, "You look like you're angry." So I
Uh,
a
huh.
little bit I suffer from a little bit of that female RBF, and
Yes.
now I instinctively to let people relax around me, my instinct is to smile. I don't even know, and I'm realizing I'm, like, perma-smiling all the time, but it is to relax people.
In the book, they taught agents when they walk into a room to raise their eyebrows up is in recognition versus faux, to tilt their head and to smile.
Oh my gosh. Now we're gonna go back and look at all my photos on Instagram and realize my head's
Uh,
cocked to one side, my eyebrows are up, and I have a giant smile on my face. So welcome to my Instagram.
yes. So we're going to have fun for the people watching on YouTube. And if you're listening, go and look at YouTube. All right. So what we talked about before is rounded eyebrow here is a little bit higher. So watch this. If we draw a line across, look how much higher this one is
Wow.
versus the other one. Okay. That's a little bit crooked. So let me kind of make it straight. There you go.
More time to make business decisions, not a shock to
Correct.
my coaches.
Yes. It's the same thing when I take on students because I offer coaching as well. That's the first thing I look at. Do I need to trim it down, get straight to the point fast, or do they need more time to watch over it? So now we talked about you've got rounded eyebrow here. Think about the people around you. We talked about you have the fuller eyelid. So look at the two differences between how full your work eyelid is versus your home eyelid. Whoops, I need to go off to
Just
the.
more of my eye on my
Uh-huh. Yep.
interesting.
Yeah. Then we talked about the rounded cheeks, which are called the healer cheeks. So if we go over here and we draw on both sides, right in here, that's what tells people you're going to take care of them at the exact same time. And we talked about you can see a little bit of nostril here. That's what tells people I'm up for listening to what you want to talk about. So if our nose angles up, we're up for listening to other people. If our nose angles down, we read about it in books all the time with his downturned nose. Well, downturned noses are like, I don't have air to share. What I'm focused on is this goal. You'll see some CEOs who have a downturned nose. What do they have to do? Make tough decisions for the good of the company. So downturned noses where you don't see
Focus.
nostrils. Yes.
I
And
gotta
it's one of those, hey, you got to break a few eggs to make an omelet type thing. So there is no right or wrong feature. It's just how does that person think? Now, there are combinations. If I see them on a lot of people, I'm like, uh-oh. But that's personal preference versus the features themselves. Now, what's interesting is when you smile, you see a hint of gum. So when people smile so big that they show gums, they're basically saying, I have nothing to hide. So when I'm in, I'm all into things. And people are going to right now go, oh, well, he's only telling positive things. There's very few negative features on someone's face. So people are like, oh, you're gaslighting people. No, because it's very specific to the person I'm talking to. But there are downside things. So like I have these little lines in my ears. They're called heart lines. If I see that on someone, I'm like, hey, you need to keep your cardiovascular health in check. And
Mhm.
sure enough, you talk to any doctor or nurse, they know what a heart line is when you see it on someone. But now back to your face. And then you have a rounded chin. So I take one on the chin for the people I care about. So if we go back to doing circles here and we drew it right in here, you're going to see more rounded than you're going to see flat or angled. So your whole face tells people like, here, I'm here to take care of you. So we can go get rid of this one and go rounded eyebrow, rounded cheeks, rounded chin. It basically screams like, I'm here to listen to you and take care of you. So the nose is the listen to you part because it angles up. So if I was to go look you up ahead of time, I know I'd have to talk about the rounded eyebrow. So I need to talk about how your customers and clients are going to win. I
Mhm.
know that you have the fuller lid. So I'm going to say, hey, once we get started, once we get rolling, let you know that you're going to be involved in the process. I'm not just going to handle it for you and deliver you a final product. I know once again, you help take care of other people. You don't have a super large upper lip. So I'm going to wait for you to share a little bit personal information. Then I'll start asking you more. Like you got a good size, but it's not really large. The larger the lip is, the more you have to ask them personal questions. And that's why lip enhancement is the number one plastic surgery right now, is for that very reason, is
Every
because,
doctor I've ever seen for anything says, you should get that lip filled. And my husband's like,
uh,
touch it.
yeah. So
Leave
it
it
tells
alone.
people that I'm more approachable because we say the phrase, keep a stiff upper lip. When we say that to someone, we want them to be stoic. So
God,
yeah, the rounded chin says, I will take one on the chin for the people I care about. So if it's rounded, I take one on the chin for other people. If it's straight, I just dig my chin in and I will stand my ground. So there's 150 different combinations of features in the face. And again, we would all know this if it wasn't for Henry VIII, who said, I don't like the idea that beggars and vagabonds can use this against their fellow man.
amazing. Brian, fascinating. Thank you so much for your time today. Where can people find you?
Sure. Can I pop up one more screen?
Yes,
All
absolutely.
right, perfect. All right, so because no one can say my last name, you did a good job. Other people cannot. All the books I recommend, everything you name it, is all basically on this QR code. If people want the cheat sheet, you just go to getthecheatsheet.com. But I put out content every day, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, because I want to get this skill out there. This skill changed my life. And if people don't start learning social skills, we're going to suffer as a society.
I love this. We will make sure that we include this and all of the links to Brian's contact info in the show notes. And then please go and take a look at this. We'll have this on YouTube when we air this. And we will also be running some Instagram and Facebook videos on this to promote the episode. So please give it a listen, go watch it, and go check Brian out. Thank
Hey,
you
can I
so
add
much.
one more thing in there?
Yeah, please
What
do.
about Nashville?
We are going to Nashville. Brian and I are going to be speaking at Impact Effect 2024 on leadership and
Mhm,
authenticity and human connection. And I'm so excited. That is going to be September 17th and 18th.
mhm.
Uh, Hope that you will check it out. Anything you want to add?
No, that's it. I look forward to seeing you in Nashville. As I mentioned before we got on, it's my second year here because the, no pun intended, impact that Jim wants to make is invaluable. So when I was very happy to return there again this year because I see what he wants to do and what he wants to create. And if anybody has the ability to be in Nashville on those dates, September 17th and 18th, it's worth your time to get there.
It really is. And Jim Morris is the organizer. Again, the event is Impact Effect 2024. You can actually go look it up online at just impacteffect24.com and find out more about it. And we hope that you'll come join us in Nashville in mid September, 17th and 18th in September. So, Brian, thank you again for joining me. It's been fascinating to get to understand more of what you do in
Mhm.
this facial feature decoding work. And I cannot wait to check out more of the work you're doing and read your book. So,
Yes.
Brian and
Yes,
I
I will
both
get that
have
done.
books we need to finish.
That's right. So we'll hold each other accountable. Let's try and have them done by Nashville.
I love it. We can do that. We can make this happen. All right.
That's right.
Thank you so much. And until next time, keep living your extraordinary lives. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed this podcast episode, please take a moment to rate and review. If you have recommendations for future topics, please reach out to me at michelleRiosOfficial.com. Lastly, please consider supporting this podcast by sharing it. Together, we can reach, inspire, and positively impact more people. Thank you.